Jake Sully, the protagonist of the film, begins by describing his straightforward and contented existence with his family in Pandora. He states that he and his wife Neytiri, the chief of the Omaticaya tribe, had 5 children in total: 2 sons, Neytiri and Loak, a daughter, Tuk, their adopted daughter, Kiri, and a human boy named Spider. Jake continues by explaining that Kiri is the child of his beloved friend Grace, who passed away while aiding the Navi people in their struggle against humans. When the humans lost their war and returned to Earth, Spider was left behind. Jake claims that despite having diverse skin tones and physical characteristics, the kids get along well and play together. He says that the kids live like a family all together. Spider is revealed to be the son of Colonel Miles Quaritch, the villain who nearly wiped out the Navis, which makes Neytiri dislike him. It turns out that Spider was too little to be sent back to Earth, so he was left behind on Pandora. On the other hand, Kiri is quite fond of Spider and feels a special connection to him. The little human boy has lived with the Navi people his entire life and believes himself to be one of them. Neytiri and Jake are having a conversation one night when they both spot some bright spacecraft in the sky. The spaceships suddenly reach them and begin inflicting mayhem. Flames are used to set fire to the Omaticaya environment, causing extensive damage and the demise of numerous animals. A squad of warriors armed with robotic artillery emerges from the spaceships and destroys what is left of the location. As they observe from a distance, Neytiri and Jake are astonished to discover that the RDA spaceship is carrying humans who are on their way to Pandora to populate the planet and establish a new main operations station. The action then moves to one of the human research facilities, where a Navi clone of the Colonel has been successfully produced. The information and memories gathered before his death have been fed to him. Because of this, the Colonel's clone is completely clueless as to how and by whom he was assassinated. The scientists have created clones of other soldiers who were there during their previous invasion on Pandora, in addition to the Colonel. The Colonel and his troops are therefore determined to eliminate the Omaticaya and Jake in particular. In the meantime, Jake commands a Navi army in the direction of the RDA train supply lines. In an effort to fend off invaders, he infiltrates it effectively and makes off with food and munitions. One of his sons, Loak, disobeys him during this procedure and gets hurt as a result. Jake reprimands him and tells him he needs to start acting more responsibly. The Colonel, on the other side, runs into his senior General Ardmore, who tells him about the Navi's flying companions, known as Scounds. They are currently slowing down and attacking their helicopters. After learning this, Quaritch devises a strategy to infiltrate the woodland where they last engaged in combat and learn more about them. Along with his other friends, he soon makes it to the jungle. Sadly, Jake's kids are also having fun in the same woodland. The Colonel immediately notices his robotic suit with his remains within it. While searching the former battlefield, Loak notices everything that is happening and promptly uses the voice transmitter he has around his neck to get in touch with his father. After hearing this, Jake advises Loak to avoid them and silently depart the area. Then, in order to make sure their kids are safe, he and Neytiri fly toward the jungle. Sadly, the humans catch Loak and his siblings when they attempt to leave. When the Colonel examines their fingers more closely, he discovers that they are his archrival's kids. Neytiri and Jake show up at that precise moment and start attacking the troops. The most of their kids are successfully let free, but Spider is tragically abducted by the bad humans. When the Colonel later asks Spider his name, he recognizes him as his son right away. Jake approaches his wife in Omaticaya and advises that they leave the area and travel to the east coast. He worries that Spider will tell the Colonel and his men where they are. Jake also warns Neytiri that until he arrives with the tribe, humans would continue to attack them because he was the one who first killed Colonel Quaritch. While Neytiri doesn't want to leave her lovely home, she is aware that her spouse is telling the truth. She thus consents to move with him. General Ardmore, on the other hand, treats Spider cruelly by putting him in a revolving machine. He makes several unsuccessful attempts to get the boy to provide crucial information. Spider simply won't budge, since he is too devoted to his Navi parents. The colonel stops the spinning machine right away because he unexpectedly cannot face his son in this condition. He then goes up to the general and promises to deal with Spider in his own manner. Later, in a different room, he runs into the youngster and tells him that he's not a nasty person. He also reveals that he is there to return him to Earth. Because of this, Spider decides to give him the information he requests in the end. The following scene shows Jake and his family flying away on their scouts from their native land. They finally land at Omaticaya, where another Navi tribe resides, after several days of flight. Surprisingly, the Navi that live here are paler in hue and favor being submerged. They begin making fun of Jake and his crew when they come across them. Tanawari, the tribe's leader, and his wife soon show up. He expresses skepticism and claims that Jake and his family are unprepared to survive in the ocean. Jake assures them that they will quickly adjust to the environment, but he is desperately trying to save his family. He describes how some humans are pursuing them. When Tanawari learns this, she at last consents to let them stay and offers them a place to stay. Additionally, he asks his kids to teach Jake's kids how to swim and use their unique aquatic critters. As requested, the youngsters of Tanawari take their new acquaintances to the seashore and begin teaching them the fundamentals. Lak, who is always up to mischief, tries to make contact with a marine monster, but slips and falls into the ocean. The kids of Tanawari start making fun of him. The girl Kiri is seen in the ocean's depths when this is all happening. She has surprisingly acclimated well to the environment and can even manage some marine life. The next day, Anning, one of Tanawari's sons, and his pals approach Kiri as she is practicing underwater meditation and begin calling her a freak. As a result, Lak shows up and strikes Anning. Anning doesn't take this lying down and begins tick-tailing some ass. Later, when Jake learns of the incident, he admonishes his son, who is the clan chief's son, to go and make amends to Anning. Lak reluctantly agrees and apologizes. Even if Anning pardons him in front of the others, he is still bitter inside. So, under the pretense of going swimming, he brings Lak to a remote area in order to teach him a lesson. Lak had no idea that the area is home to hazardous sea creatures. Later, as Lak is fishing, a big animal swims briskly at him. Lak is terrified and anxious as he searches for assistance, but is unable to find anyone. But just then, a huge beast by the name of Payakan steps in to save the day. With the aid of its large head, it quickly dispatches the predator. Here, we learn that Payakan is a Tulkun, a tranquil and wise being. The Omaticaya consider the thousands of Tulkuns in the water to be their spiritual kin. The biggest and most powerful of them all is Payakan. Payakan rescues Lak in the interim and brings him to the surface. The latter also assists the animal by removing some harpoons that appeared to be inflicting pain on it. The two develop a lovely friendship as a result of this. Even through his blowhole, Lak climbs. Later, when Lak arrives on land, Tanawari summons him. The strict boss wants Anning to apologize after learning about his son's misdeeds. The unselfish Lak, however, denies involvement from Anning and takes responsibility for his deeds. Anning is finally persuaded by this to realize that the new Navi are actually not all that horrible. After some time has passed, Lak rejoins his brother and friends, and shares the story of how Payakan saved his life. To his amazement, no one takes him seriously. Instead, they make it known that Payakan was abandoned by the other Tulkuns, because it was a murderous place. Spider, on the other hand, gives the colonel a briefing on some aspects of Navi culture, before taking him to the Hallelujah Mountains to choose a scout. The colonel initially has trouble, but he quickly gets the hang of it, and flies him out. He soon learns where Jake might be, too, and gathers his army and marches for the Omaticaya reef. He approaches some of the Omaticayas when he gets there and asks if they know Jake. The nasty humans kill one of the Omaticaya when they refuse, and they also set fire to their homes. The Omaticayas maintain their position in the face of this. Now that he has no other choice than to execute Plan B, the colonel directs his men to murder as many Tulkuns as possible in the hopes that this will ultimately bring Jake to light. However, killing them has another benefit. The only thing more valuable than unobtainium is a rare liquid that the Tulkuns have inside their brains that can lengthen life. A few hunters soon begin searching for the sea monsters. They hit them with many trackers, knocking them out. A mother named Tulkun is brutally murdered, while her children lie beside her in disbelief in a tragic moment. The trackers remain inside the Tulkins when the humans go, though. The Metkayina become enraged and vow to fight the attackers when they learn that their companions are being slain. Jake calms them down by pointing out that they must first tell the Tulkins about the trackers. The only way they can stop another strike is by doing this. When Loak learns this, he immediately heads over to tell his closest friend Payakan. He is joined by Anning and a few more locals. They ultimately run into Payakan and are ready to remove the tracker from him. The Colonel and his hunting party, however, suddenly show up in their whale ship. After spotting them, Loak communicates with his father and quickly alerts him to the situation. He succeeds in removing the tracker from Payakan's body along with his friends. They then dive beneath to conceal themselves, as the Colonel's crew begins to search for them. Jake approaches Tanawari in the meantime, and alerts him of the disappearance of their children. The boss becomes concerned and immediately gives the order for war preparations. As soon as everyone has their weapons, they all move toward the fight area, including Jake and Neytiri. On the other hand, the Colonel orders his crew to launch their attack on the Tulkins and find Jake's children. They eventually locate Kiri and Tuck after hunting for them for some time, and they catch them in a net. Loak makes an effort to rip the net, but instead finds himself being pulled to the whale ship by it. They are handcuffed to the ship's railing when the Colonel eventually shows up. He then removes the collar transmitter off of Loak and begs Jake to give up, so that his kids are protected. Without any other choices, Jake consents to his demands. Payakan makes the decision to save his best friend Loak. When he sees him bound to the deck and handcuffed, he leaps onto the deck in a dangerous maneuver, and begins flapping his enormous fins. By taking advantage of the commotion, this destroys the ship and expels a large number of men. The Colonel and his soldiers are attacked by Jake and the Metkayina as well. They want to protect their kids, but they also want to exact justice. In the meantime, Spider destroys the whale ship's controller, causing it to crash against some rocks and fill with water. To free Loak, Tuck, and Kiri, Jake and his oldest son Neytiri quickly climb the deck. They then give the kids the go-ahead to head back to safety, but Loak declines. Instead, he makes the choice to protect Spider, his adopted brother. He is joined by Neytiri, and after some looking about, they come across Spider. The Colonel notices them as they prepare to depart the ship and starts firing. Unfortunately, one of the bullets hits Neytiri, who suffers serious injuries. He is promptly taken to their mother on the coast by Loak and Spider, but due to the massive blood loss he dies. Neytiri begins to sob and wail inconsolably as she witnesses the death of her son in before of her eyes. Using his scown, the villainous Colonel is able to apprehend Kiri and Tuck. He later gets in touch with Jake, and lets Jake know that he is with both of his daughters. Jake manages to calm Neytiri down after learning this knowledge, and convinces her to work with him to save their daughters. The second one complies, and furious, she calls her scown, gathers her bow and arrows, and flees in the direction of the ship. As soon as Jake gets close to the ship, he sets off an explosion that kills the Colonel's soldiers. Neytiri also shows up and begins shooting arrows at the remaining people, instantly murdering them all. Jake locates his young daughter Tuck in the meanwhile and sets her free. But at the same moment, the Colonel also appears and Kiri is being held at knife point by him. Jake reluctantly surrenders his firearms after being threatened to do so. Spider is being held captive by a vindictive Neytiri, who also professes her intention to kill him. The Colonel initially states that he is not related to Spider, but he departs Kiri as soon as Neytiri makes a tiny cut in his chest. Neytiri and her family get ready to leave after, but the Colonel says that he'll track Jake down and kill him once more. Later, Jake comes to the conclusion that in order to live peacefully, the Colonel must be killed. He therefore goes back to the battleground. This time, the bitter adversaries engage in a traditional fist battle. The two go against one another stride for stride in a tough race. But in the end, Jake, our hero, triumphs. He succeeds in encircling the Colonel's neck with his arms and rendering him unconscious. Jake lets him drown in the water because he believes he is already dead. Unfortunately, he also finds it difficult to breathe and begins to sink. Loak rescues him at the same moment and carries him to the surface. Later, Payakan transports the entire family to the coast while carrying them. Spider, on the other hand, also rescues his biological father by pulling him out of the sea. Spider, however, refuses to leave the facility with the Colonel, and goes back to his biological family. In the last scene, Netam's body is buried by Jake's family and the entire Metkayina tribe at the bottom of the sea, where the lights tubes welcome him as one of their own. In the final moments of the film, Jake reflects on his elder son's fondest memories, before recognizing that he is in heaven with their gods. Subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.